Hello, marketers. This is the Funnel Lab, and welcome to Funnel Lab Fridays. Funnel Lab Fridays is a weekly LinkedIn live session where we dive into use cases and challenges for data savvy marketers. I'm your host, Eric Westerkamp, CEO of CaliberMind, and joining me today is Tracy Earles, Senior Director of Marketing Analytics at NetApp. Today, Tracy and I will be discussing translating buyer intelligence and how marketing can drive sales success using AI. Tracy, welcome. I think this is your second time on. Is that
It
correct?
is my second time on. Thanks for having me back. I guess I didn't disappoint the first time.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So we've had a lot of conversations over the years and around data, AI, where a lot of this stuff is going. Like, and to be honest, like we kind of started this journey almost 6 years ago, 7 years ago together as your organization and ours, really around sort of like marketing data and leads.
Yep.
And it's really transformed over the years, right? As the sophistication of marketing tools gets better, sophistication of AI gets better, right? And I know that you've been working on sort of transforming how marketing delivers insights now to like sales organizations, not just the marketing organization, right? And
Correct.
can you maybe share a little bit like what drove you toward this? What kind of has you and your organization thinking like we need to take this information and get it to these other parts of the organization in addition to just supporting what we've kind of been doing in the past?
Sure. So I guess to sort of set the stage, right? NetApp is a we're at the bottom end of the Fortune 500, right? So we're a fairly large company, about 12,000 employees, 6 billion in revenue, something like that, and more than 1,000 salespeople. And let's say 5 years ago, we were, from a demand gen perspective, we were in the business of delivering leads, like all marketing teams were. And we monitor the conversion rate of those leads and ultimately into opportunities. And one of the things that we noticed was the limitations of leads. And there's, leads are great because they are an early indicator of demand. They are a contact name that an SDR or a salesperson can start with as a point of entry into the account. But the limitation of leads are a couple. One is in our business, right? We sell large capital equipment, right? Big dollar ticket items, which is typically purchased by a buying team with multiple roles on the team.
Yeah.
And in general, when we looked at the data, the contact that was the lead was generally not in the buying team. And sort of the flip side of that is if you are on the buying team and you have the horsepower to sign let's say $1 million purchase order, over the course of your career, you've gotten pretty good at not becoming a lead. Right? You don't really want to get a call from an SDR, and so you know how to avoid that. So then we said, well, what is the next buying indicator of value, right? And that is, we had built this capability to track all of these engagement touch points, right, on top of the CaliberMind tool. And we could monitor what the account was doing. And so we said, okay, well, we can monitor and measure that depth of engagement. And when it rises to a certain level, we can send an alert to the sales team.
Yeah.
And so that became sort of an account lead, right? We have a certain name for it, but basically it's an account indicator of demand.
Right.
And then as we started doing that, we started learning a couple of things. One is we wanted to deliver to the salesperson, okay, this account is doing this stuff. This is what this account is doing. And we recognized marketing speaks in marketing language. Sales doesn't speak marketing language. And so they're like, what do I do with this information?
Yeah.
And so that's our sort of next solution that we're working toward is, okay, how do we wrap around that alert the appropriate context to say, Mr. Salesperson, Ms. Salesperson, this account is doing some interesting stuff. This is what they're doing. This is what you should talk to them about.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah, it's super interesting because and we're seeing that across our customer base where marketing has seemed to transition a little bit, or at least in sort of the leading marketing organizations that we're working with, from sort of a lead gen, demand gen management group to sort of that owner of the buyer journey, right? Primarily because in marketing organizations that have built a marketing data warehouse and have all that data, you've actually stitched it together. You've
Right.
needed to for the marketing activities, and then you're looking at that and you realize, well, we actually know what web activities they did and what ads they touched on and what content they downloaded and potentially what people did with interactions, and even monitoring what sales activities have happened, right? So you've got that buyer journey. And what we're seeing is that companies are now trying to figure, the marketing organization trying to figure out, like, how do we now, as the owner of this buyer journey, help the rest of the organization leverage that data and information so they can do, they can perform at a higher level within their organizations, like, sales rep getting, some notification that here's an account that we need to go focus on. That's great. Here's an account we need to go focus on. And they've been doing these things way better because it helps them decrease prep time and increase, quality of their outbound. Oh, by the way, here's 3 or 4 suggestions on what to do even better, right?
Yeah, I think what I've come to realize is, demand indicators are an interesting piece of value that marketing delivers to sales, but it's really the account intelligence that is the most valuable thing that we offer to sales. Right, marketing does other stuff, right? We create and establish the brand and messaging and all that stuff. But from a demand gen perspective, the most important thing that I think we can do is give intelligence to the sales team and enable their, let's say, efficient pursuit of sales.
Right.
You mentioned briefly sort of cutting down time. If we think about the SDR versus the field sales model in our world, we measure the average time for an SDR to pursue a lead. And it historically is over 10 minutes. And that's because they get a lead, which is a name and a phone number. They might get the last campaign that
Right.
this person engaged with. And then they go out to LinkedIn Sales Navigator and they try and put together the story of what this account is. And part of the reason they're doing that is they know that this person may not be on the buying team. Right. And their goal is to get to the buying team. And so they need to have the right approach to have the right conversation that gets them there. So they do this research. Right. Our goal is to get that more than 10 minutes down to below 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And doing that by giving all that context that the SDR was trying to put together, we already have it.
Yeah.
And we can attach it to the lead. We can deliver it in Salesforce with the lead and save them all that time.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think it puts marketing, to be honest, in a unique position in organizations that they haven't, I wouldn't say haven't been in the past, but in the past, marketing's job has been to deliver a lead. And the lead, and in the organization, it was whatever the value of that lead was, and the conversion rates is kind of to some extent how important marketing was, right? But now when you're delivering context and you're delivering all the information to help the sales team, it's not just this lead came in, but you need to reach out to these 4 other people. By the way, we determined that it was these 4 because of the type of company and other indicators. And here's the 3 people we actually already have contacts for. By the way, they actually maybe interacted with some content or something, months ago, but that shows that there's some interest, and you deliver that gives them so much more ammunition to kind of be successful in their outreach.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not necessarily a known person that you're gathering intelligence on, right? We see anonymous traffic all the time that we can typically associate with an account, but not with an individual. So we deliver a lead, John Doe at
Yep.
company ABC,
Yeah.
but we can also say others at company ABC did all these other things,
Yeah.
right? And so they're interested in our Kubernetes solution or whatever it is.
Right.
And so it's not always unmasked known contacts that are giving you that insight.
Yeah. So another question is, with a large sales organization like you have at NetApp, what are some of the challenges you've encountered in sort of scaling the delivery of this type of information to these teams?
Yeah. So, I mentioned we probably have over 1,000 salespeople. We have, tens of thousands of current accounts, and we have, 5 times more prospective accounts, right? Scale is the biggest problem that we work with. And had I had more foresight 5 years ago and knew that this is where we were trying to get to,
Mm-hmm.
I would have solved, or we would have solved some of these problems differently 5 years ago. And the biggest challenge that we face in scaling this is data quality.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a simple example, right? So when we generate when our marketers want to create and execute a new campaign, they generate a campaign code, and we have an engine that does that for them. And they enter all this information. This is an event, and it's this use case or this target segment or whatever it is. They enter all this information, and the machine spits out an 80-character campaign code.
Mm.
And in the last year, we generated 3,000 of these campaign codes.
Sure.
And marketing and our analytics team and our data science team use these campaign codes to do all these different wonderful things that we do.
Yeah.
But these campaign codes are worthless to sales, right? I know how we build them, and I have trouble translating them.
Mm-hmm.
So what we should have done 5 years ago is, with that campaign code, you, Mr. Marketer, need to give us a simple real text explanation of what this campaign is.
Right.
And that's a simple example of what we're having to sort of rebuild now so that we can deliver it at scale.
Right. Is this a piece of content they downloaded? Is this a webinar they went to?
Right.
If it was a webinar, what was it about?
Right.
Things like that. The type
Exactly.
of who are we targeting? Yeah, interesting.
Having accurate meta on your content. Right. So you have some PDF on some web page, and you didn't know what is the topic, when was it created, what is the target persona that this is intended for. All of those things would be really nice to have to deliver along with this contextual intelligence.
Right. Because the salesperson, at the end of the day, they're really trying to figure out, like, what's the pain point out there that the company's experiencing?
Right.
What do they need? Who should I be trying to get to? Right. And then what have they already seen that may allow me to get some interest? Right. At the end of the day, they got to get somebody to respond to them.
Right.
They get an email or make a phone call or do something, and to do that, they got to be able to hook them somehow. And they're going to hook them by understanding more about that company, their pain, and then what they're interested in.
Right.
Without that, it's very hard. And I think that's been traditionally the hard, that there's a communication gap between marketing and sales. And often it comes down to that operational aspect of it, is that marketing talks like this because that's how they run and manage their systems, but sales doesn't.
Right. It's funny that sort of communication gap between marketing and sales is not just a communication gap. It's, I will make the statement, broadly speaking, sales doesn't actually know what marketing does.
Mm.
They think marketing places ads.
Right.
And they do events and really sort of visible things to sales. But they have no idea that we do all this other stuff, or that we're capable of doing all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so building the bridge, and I've actually started using that metaphor internally, building the bridge between marketing and sales is what this account intelligence allows us to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, the real breakthrough in the last, I'd say, year really has been by leveraging large language models, it starts to allow us to take that data and information and translate it into ways and formats that other teams can leverage and use. You could take this data set up for marketing, and then turn it into something that's much simpler, that's been distilled, that's been summarized.
Right.
Get it into the language of the team that you're trying to give it to, so that they can easily use it and leverage that data and information. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, the challenge, which I kind of said about data quality, is, we need to train the language model.
Yeah.
And it doesn't understand 80 character gobbledygook either. And so we need to give it good data so that it can give us good text.
Yeah, we're seeing that too. You and I were just talking about how can you even use these systems to help do a better job of improving the data. And a use case that we're experimenting with is how to use, we've got, you use them, a bunch of our customers have these rule tables that, if they're a manager and their title contains marketing or this, they're in this department. And you need to do that because you need to distill. Yeah, I think we did analysis once. We said we had 160,000 titles in our system, of which 120,000 were unique, were distinct.
Right. Titles are a mess.
Yeah, they're a mess. But they're all pointing at the same thing. So you need to distill that data into a list of 15 departments that you can really leverage. And we've built up, and a lot of companies built up these big rule tables to figure out how to do it. And we've been playing around with well, what if I just told the LLM how I want you to interpret these things and gave it the same list? And we're finding that these things do a very good job of interpreting this data and turning it into the summarization that you can really use.
Interesting. One of the challenges, not in a bad way, a good way, that we face is, one of our target use case applications for our equipment, and this is public knowledge, is AI. Right? Everybody's pursuing AI, but when you think about large data storage equipment, the buyer team 3 years ago, pre-AI, is different than the AI. So now in the AI world, you're starting to have these really kind of data scientists involved in the purchase process.
Right.
And that's a new animal for us. It's new behaviors in consuming our content. It's new titles in our database.
Yeah.
It's new kinds of conversations that our salespeople have to have. And that's caused us to sort of rethink some of the things that we look for in our data. And it's just because we have a new use case, and new use cases come all the time.
Yep.
So getting better at that is something that's important for our success.
Yeah, we're seeing a little bit of that internally ourselves. We have one of our agents goes and looks at all of our opportunities and things, and then distills that down to the natural buyer groups. And that tends to be relatively stable for an organization, right? But we're starting to see a little bit of an increase in that, like, in those data scientists are coming in, you're getting some more of those groups, and you're seeing more of those titles, and they're starting to enter into those buying groups. You can start to see that behavior kind of move.
Right. And something similar kind of happened about 3 or 4 years ago when we started, when we really started penetrating the cloud storage services market. Right. So now we're not selling, in that case, we're not selling large capital equipment, we're selling subscription services.
Right.
And so then you start getting, financial roles in there that hadn't been there in the past. And the whole buying dynamic is different in there, right? It's shorter buy cycles and things like that. So that was the last new use case. AI is the current new use case is something that's coming in 3 years.
So let me ask you a question to that point. Over the next 12 to 24 months, where do you see this stuff kind of going? Like, I think the natural next step is summarization and getting this information to sales teams. Where do you see it kind of going from there?
Well, so it's two things that we're starting down the path on. And when I say we, it's really our data science team. One is associating contacts together in buyer groups. And that's not an easy problem. right? It's not like you look for a title in finance and you look for a title in engineering, you look for a title in purchasing, because we've already said titles suck.
Yeah.
But it's also, you need to start interpreting behaviors to try to determine what role they take on the buyer's team.
Yeah.
And so associating contacts together as buyer teams is one. The other is starting, now that we have all this rich data, starting to apply machine learning to that.
Yeah.
To say, you know what, when somebody's at this stage of their journey, the next best action is that.
Yeah.
Right. And that action could be a sales action, could be a marketing action, right? Invite them to a webinar with a live demo, right? For a marketing action.
Yeah.
For sales, it could be, okay, we're engaged with these three. We are missing a operational decision maker. Go find that person.
Yeah.
And so those are kind of where we're going.
Yeah. Which again gets to, how does marketing leverage the information in the marketing data warehouse and the buyer journeys to kind of create that, like, actionable, things to go and do, right? It's like, okay, salesperson, you need to go find this person in the organization. You need to go do it. And here's the information that we have. Or marketing, we need to go warm. Like, we know that something's starting here with an organization. And we know that when we see these behaviors, these things, when done after that, tend to get us the most success. They invite them to a webinar, send this content, get these types of things in front of them, right? That tends to get us, for this type of buyer, this tends to work the best. But for large organizations, that can come because you have lots of different industries, lots of different types of products you sell. So it has to be able to sort through the noise and then do that at this more granular level.
Yeah. You mentioned sort of, we sell lots of products. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we have tried to communicate to sales is, they want to know, what product is this person interested in? And we typically don't have that information. The better information we have is, what problem are they trying to solve?
Yeah.
And we have shown that there is zero correlation between the type of product content they consume and the product that they buy.
Oh,
they consume all kinds of content.
Right.
The content that matters that they consume is the kind of problem statement. What's broken stuff? Right? What problem am I trying to solve? And we have probably 8 products that can solve that. And so what the salesperson needs to know is, what do I talk about?
Yeah.
In terms of what they're trying to solve. And then I'll take them, and we like to say, look, we can't tell you what, nobody in marketing knows what that lead or that account is interested in until a salesperson actually talks to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you talked earlier about kind of where we're going, right? Yeah. And I sort of gave a technical answer, right? And these are the technology things we're trying to solve. But the other big thing we're trying to solve is proving to sales that this stuff works.
Yeah.
And that we're not just dumping stuff in their Salesforce inbox and that there's real value in there. And so getting sort of win stories of this is how this has worked in the past.
Yeah.
This is, again, building the bridge between marketing and sales. That's a lot of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's huge. I'll give kind of one final example. We had another customer of ours. I was talking a similar role. She runs marketing operations, and I get a Slack message from her. And she's like, we just had our sales kickoff, and we're beta testing your ability to basically send the buyer journey summaries to sales. We had 2 salespeople in there, and they just won the sales kickoff best practices competition because of, they showed, and they were using your product and they were using ChatGPT on top of it to do a couple things, and they won. And her message was, my phone hasn't stopped ringing since sales kickoff. Every salesperson is now trying to get access to this information.
Awesome.
Because they saw how it helped these early adopters started to get better results because they were using this information, right? And now sales buys in because they're starting to see that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to put together.
Yeah, it's huge. Well, we're going to jump in now to tool time. And we're going to show a little bit of how this works. Let me jump to the right screen. Hold on. Here we go. And so in CaliberMind, we've got, these the ability to generate these buyer journeys, right? So I've got a buyer journey here for a sample account. And in the buyer journey, there may be lots and lots of different events, right? Lots of people that are interacting with it, lots of events that are happening. They're looking at G2, they're going to webinars, they're doing all these things, right? Probably similar, Tracy, to a lot of the stuff you guys see.
Yep.
And the challenge here is like, this is a great way for a marketer to see what's going on, and maybe a sales rep, but it's hard to distill from all of this, like lots of emails back and forth, like what you do next, right? And so, the ability to summarize that is what we've built in with the Ask Cal capabilities right here. And we're summarizing that information, and then we have it right here available inside of CaliberMind, right, for our customers. But what we found was that while CaliberMind and our tools are a great tool for the marketers, often this information really needs to be where the sales rep is. And the sales reps are sitting in Salesforce, right? They should be, if that's your CRM, or Dynamics, if that's the CRM of choice. And so what we've done is we've rebuilt this so that we can actually, right in Salesforce, send this information right in and place it right on the appropriate accounts. So in this case, what we're doing that I think is interesting is that we actually look at a funnel, because we're managing the funnel for customers, and we'll say when an account gets to this point in the funnel, then we care. And that's when we'll start to pull this together and we'll send this stuff. So we're not spamming every account and doing all these things. It's these accounts have gotten, to your point earlier, to this level of engagement. We care. Now let's put it in. And that's where we will then send that information right into Salesforce, place that buyer journey there that they can access. And the other thing we're doing is we're extracting out the next steps. So we're actually looking at the last, say, 3 or 4 months, because a lot of the email and the content and the back and forth is in here, we'll actually extract the next steps and put those right in there and say, hey, by the way, they asked for this information. They did this, they did this, they did this. Have you done this? Have you followed up with this person? Have you set up the demo? Have you done that? And we found that's really helpful because the sales teams then come in and, okay, here's what's going on. Here's a little bit about the company. Oh, here's a couple of next steps. And we're finding that their prep time is going way down and getting ready for an account. And then their ability to kind of, narrow in on who should I talk to? What is the message? Really shortens that kind of that research task that they were going through before.
Right. Exactly. And this is very similar to what we have built and continue to build on, right? So, you mentioned delivering it where they live, right? We are pushing it directly to Salesforce. Initially, we had them come to a Power BI dashboard, right. and that's just adding more time and complexity.
Sure.
And a lot of them won't even bother. But you attach it to the lead object, or you attach it to the account object in Salesforce. That's where it needs to be.
Yeah, and I think this is where, when you start to figure out next best steps and things like that, this is a natural place to put this information and start to trigger it, right? Which is, by the way, we really recommend that for accounts like this that have had this journey, we really see them get interested in this use case or this type of content, or you really need to connect with these people here with this type of roles or titles, because without them, we've never seen it really progress, right?
Right. And so then you start thinking about, okay, how do I deliver time-based notifications, right? Do I set an alert in Salesforce? Do I assign a task? And we're exploring those issues now. We're treading very lightly, right? We don't want to overstep. And as soon as we turn something on, it's again, thousands of accounts, thousands of salespeople. And so we don't want to overstep and deliver what could seem spammy within their world.
Right. Right. Yeah, we've seen that in the past where you just send out engagement scores and you send out engagement values into sales reps, and they look at it, and to some extent, at some point, it becomes noise, right? Where, okay, I really only care. They really only can deal with X number of accounts at a given time, anyways.
Right.
So you really need to be focused on those accounts or surfacing things that they may not know that's happening, but they really should be paying attention to. But if you're just sending out tons of information on everything, but like I said, it just fills up your email, fills up your inbox, and you just kind of start to ignore it over time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Tracy, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for jumping on.
Absolutely.
And this wraps up this week's episode of Funnel Lab Fridays. We'll be getting back to this, I think, in 1 or 2 weeks. I got to go look at the schedule there.
Excellent. Well, thanks for having me. It's always interesting.
All right. Thanks, Tracy.
All right.